I am here in the beautiful island of Boracay, but I am here to tell you about Singapore. Singapore is known for its shopping, its cleanliness, and good food. Do you want some ideas on where to eat in Singapore? Well, here's everything that I ate whilst I was there last. Let us start with their hawker centers. A hawker center is basically their street food style, very cheap, and it's very popular in Singapore. I went to 3 of them. I went to Maxwell Food Center, the Amoy Food Center, and Lau Pasat. I'm going to tell you first about Maxwell Food Center. This is the first stop that I went to as soon as I landed in Singapore for dinner. I went to Tian Tian Hainanese Chicken Rice. I've been meaning to try this Hainanese Chicken Rice because I've heard everyone rave about it. Everyone that I know that visits Singapore go to it. And every time I've been to the Maxwell Food Center, it's always busy and there's always a queue in this shop. It wasn't that busy anymore when I went, but yes, there was still a little bit of a queue. And mind you, I went there dinner time and it was still so hot. It's always the hottest for me in my first day or first few days in a hot country or a humid country in Southeast Asia, even if I am from Australia. The thing that you have to remember about these hawker centers, as you can imagine, they are cash only, but most of them, especially at the Maxwell Food Center, there are ATMs around where you can take cash out, so no worries. Definitely the Hainanese chicken, I got the boiled one. You can get a roasted one as well, but it has to be the, well, in my humble opinion, the boiled one. It was good. One of the good ones or one of the better ones I've had, but I wouldn't say it's the best. In a way, they kind of all taste the same. It's just a matter of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to fuck up. But yeah, I'm not sure if I would queue hours for it if there was one. You know what I mean? I definitely rate that place a 7 out of 10. There are 2 places that I went to in Amoy Food Center. This one was also just a walking distance from where I was staying. I stayed at Shangri-La in the CBD, and all of these places are just walking distance from the CBD, which is going to be convenient if you're traveling there for the holidays. The first place that I went to for breakfast is a place called Aang Hun Coffee. So I went there to have kaya toast. Kaya toast is my favorite, and it's probably one of the few food that you'll see in this vlog, eaten by myself a few times. They are the only place left that still grill the bread of this kaya toast, and I always get it with, usually comes with a set coffee, tea, and soft-boiled eggs, which you mix with white pepper and dark soy sauce. Yummy. So good that I have bought that kaya toast or the kaya jam back to Sydney. When I went, it's on the 2nd floor, so don't get lost. It was very quiet, barely anyone was there, and the service, as you can expect, it was how do I explain this? It is a great service in an uncle way. You know how they look grumpy and unimpressed and unhappy, but they really love you and they really want to take care of you. In fact, he checked on me whilst I was eating. You don't really get that from a hawker center. And he made sure that I was seated underneath the ceiling fan because he knew I'd be hot. And his English wasn't the best either, and it's minimal. He spoke Chinese and I didn't. But I felt that care from that grumpy dad / uncle. It was so good, so cheap, an 8 out of 5 out of 10. Maybe a 9 out of 10 with cute uncle. Now, the other place that I went to is a Noodle Story. It was raining so hard that day. I was there for dinner and some of the places closed. So you gotta check their hours because the actual hawker center would have their hours and the stalls within it would have their different hours as well. And for the most part, either early in the morning or at night, morning dinner, they would be closed. It's just so inconsistent, but that's part of the fun. It was raining so hard and it was one of the few places that was still open. But in fact, I also had a list of the places I want to try. This one is on the ground floor, and it was in my list and was still open. So I gave it a go. To be honest, I was looking at the menu and it didn't look promising, but it was on my list, so I gave it a go. And it's ramen. A bit of a meh for me. I was expecting a little bit more from it, given that it is ramen, right? Like There's just so much flavor of it. Should have plenty of flavor, umami, been cooking for hours, but that wasn't the case. Still nice though, don't get me wrong. Like, I would not expect, I wouldn't get that from just a random store in Sydney or here in the Philippines, for example. So a solid 7 out of 10. The last hawker center I went to is Lau Pasat. This is probably the one that you will see very prominently in Singapore, and at night they would have the street right next to it closed off for all the skewers, all the barbecues that they sell. In Lau Pasat, I was after Lau Fuzi fried Lau Fuzi, and I wanted to order the fried kway teow. Sorry, I have to look at my cheat sheet for these things. I want to say it correctly, and I'm probably butchering it anyway. I could not find it. The place is massive. I could not find it. They have every cuisine you can think of, especially Asian cuisine. They even have Filipino, which is great. When I first visited Singapore, the first few times, they didn't have that many Filipino food in the hawker centers, but now they do, especially in the big ones like Lau Pasat. I ended up getting the black carrot cake because I have been snobbing, ignoring these carrot cakes for the longest time. And I finally gave it a go a couple of years back, and whoa, I loved it. So I thought I'd give it a try. For breakfast, a bit too heavy, too salty for me. I don't remember the place that I ordered it from, and there are a few of them that does that. However, I made sure I went to the one where there's a busy, there's a queue, but I don't know, I just didn't quite like that so much. It's too salty, too savory for my first meal, so maybe that's my fault. A solid 7 out of 10 for that one too. Now that we're done with all the hawker centers, and you gotta try hawker center. They're everywhere. You'll see them in Marina Bay Sands as well. And I will talk about one that I went to later in this video. But let's talk about the National Kitchen by Violet Un. This place, I just had it in my mind that it's very fancy, but surprisingly when I got there, it wasn't that fancy, but it's still pretty upscale in a way. It's in the National Museum. I did my tour and I walked around, and I was actually late, right? I got my booking wrong, so I called them and rushed, and lo and behold, half the staff were Filipino, so they made it work for me. They got me a table, and I appreciated that so much. And I think that is always part of your experience, right? When you're paying to eat outside of a hawker center, that whole service is part of your experience and what makes it good or bad or makes you want to come back. So National Kitchen by Violet Un, they do Peranakan cuisine or a Nyonya cuisine, right? So which comes from Peranakans, which are the descendants of the early Chinese migrants in Singapore. I had butter prawns, and the lady who served my table, who happens to be a Filipino as well, recommended an okra dish because I wanted some sort of vegetable, and she gave me a chili sauce as well, which you mix with calamansi. That was probably the highlight. That was really good. The dishes were nice. It's so hard when you're by yourself because it's more of a sharing place and everyone else there is a group. And eating by yourself, you can't really try too much. If you order 1 or 2 things, that's already too much as it is. And because it was kind of spicy and she warned me about that, I tried a Singapore Island iced tea as well to cool me off and to prepare for that spice. It wasn't that spicy, it was very manageable. I would rate that place an 8 out of 10. Can't go to Singapore without having the Singaporean chili crab. And of course, I went to Chimes, which is a former church now turned into a place where there's plenty of restaurants and bars. And I went to New Ubin Seafood. There are actually a few of them, so probably my mistake, but it's quite a popular chain. It's my second time there. The first time I went was with workmates, and that was good fun. And don't get me wrong, it was still pretty good. And again, they were very friendly. I was late again. This time, it was a bit of a conscious tardiness. Side story, my university was playing for the finals championship in the UAAP, and I decided to finish the game before heading out to dinner. Anyway, got there, called them. They couldn't make the changes because it's the head office. Got there. They still seated me. Again, very friendly staff. They're not Filipinos this time, but still very friendly. They sat me in this massive table, which they would need in like an hour. And it's a table for 10 with the lazy Susan. I was by myself. They kept smiling at me every time they would walk past. I don't know what they're thinking. What's this girl doing, eating spicy Singaporean chili crab by herself in this restaurant that is obviously designed for sharing and for groups. But you know what? If you're in Singapore, you gotta try that Singaporean chili crab, and I wanted to try it, so I'm gonna have it. I would say though that the best that I've had was this. I need to find out, so maybe ask me in the comments and I will find out from my workmate if he could remember. But he brought myself and our other workmates in this hole-in-the-wall, unair-conditioned place in Singapore, and that was the best Singaporean chili crabs I've ever had. And make sure that if you do, wherever you eat it, have it with the mantau bread, get that, dip it in that sauce, and eat it. So good. A 7.5 out of 10. Now the next place that I went to is Kamala Villas restaurant. I forgot her name now, but it's a vlogger. She's Australian actually. And her dad, I believe, lives in Singapore, so she frequents the country, or at least used to. And she went to this place and it looked really interesting, right? It gets really busy, but I went there for breakfast and there wasn't any queue. By the time I got back there about roughly midday or maybe 11 o'clock, there was already a massive queue outside. I was quite overwhelmed. The staff weren't the friendliest, but they were neither rude. You know what I mean? They just doing their job and probably don't have time for me. But a very friendly local who was sitting next to me helped me decipher the menu because there's just so much. And they even taught me, because I usually don't like dosa, but that's what everyone is ordering and what people recommended. So I got it. Oh my God, I loved it. Like, I really do. I did. I don't understand why I never did. So maybe, because he was explaining to me that there are two kinds, right? The dosa, in the south, and in North India, it's called dosa. It's a dosa. Please help me out if you're Indian. Explain it better than I could down below in the comments. So I got it. And in Sydney, it's mostly south, if I'm not mistaken. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong. But that was so good. The balance of that thin, crispy bread with the curry, and I got all the veg curry. It's a vegetarian place, by the way. So yeah, it's all gonna be veg. And I love that. Whenever I go for Indian food, I always like to get some sort of potato curry or the lentil, which people don't tend to go for, but I do, I love it. This place is an 8.5 out of 10. This one I'm definitely gonna butcher. So I went to the High G Lane, and near and around that is a place called HJH. I don't know how to pronounce that. Myuna Restaurant and Catering. It was chaotic and dirty. And I got there, it wasn't even that peak time for lunch, but it was still very busy. I would definitely give it another go and go back another time where it's not so busy, so I would get the chance to talk to the staff and ask for help on what to get, because it's a turo style, we call it in the Philippines, which is point. So it's pre-cooked dishes, and then you just tell them which one you like, right? And it doesn't have any labels, doesn't tell you what it is. So it was overwhelming for a foreigner like me because I did not know what's in there, which makes me think now if a foreigner or a tourist is going to a turo here in the Philippines, they would be like, what is that? Totally get it. What I got is like a plate, like a rendang, curry, but the whole place is so dirty. You have to obviously find your own table, but it wasn't cleaned and they didn't clean it throughout the process. It was hectic. So that did not help with the experience, but the food was still pretty good that I will definitely go back if ever I'm in that area again, but I probably wouldn't go all the way out there for it. A 7.5 out of 10. I have already mentioned that Kaya Toast is my favorite, and I had to go to the first branch or the first store ever of Kilini Kopitiam in Lorong Telok. Hope I said that correctly. I got, of course, Kaya Toast with the soft-boiled eggs. And matcha, they had matcha, not very traditional. However, they do know their market. It's in a very nice area of Singapore, actually, quite a touristy area. but very nice, not too crowded. It's very unassuming, like literally the table in front of me is the auntie preparing the vegetables in front of you that I bet will be served at some point throughout the day. And it was relatively busy, and the people or the customers are from different walks of life, which was very interesting. I was the only tourist, I think, but I don't mind that. An 8 out of 10. Another restaurant that I went to, and probably the only proper Chinese restaurant that I went to, is Minjiang. This place is in a hotel called Goodwood Park Hotel. It has a very old, rich kind of vibe, that hotel in that area. And you have to know it's there for you to try it out. So heard some good reviews. It's I'm checking out today, so they are just checking in if I need some help with my luggages, and I do not. Anyway, so this place definitely serves elevated Chinese food. I ordered a lot. Again, another dilemma, another challenge when you're traveling solo and you go to a Chinese place, for that matter. It's always good for serving. They placed me in a corner where it's very easy for me to vlog, actually. But again, quite a big table just for myself. I got a lazy Susan happening in front of me. I ordered plenty. I ordered the soup of the day. I ordered, I think, about 4 dumplings. 2 of them were soup dumplings, and another 2 or 1 dumpling. And they actually forgot the last dumpling. So I had room for dessert, and I had their mango pomelo sago, which was the bomb. You have to get that. That was so good. Usually you would have mango sago when you go for a Chinese restaurant and you have dumplings. But this one, they added pomelo, which just elevated the flavor. The first soup dumpling that I got, so I got a xiaolongbao, as you should, because it's one of the best dumplings you could ever have. But the other soup dumpling that I got is actually quite different, or at least for me, it wasn't what I was expecting. It's a massive dumpling in the soup. Quite nice, but I prefer your xiaolongbao type, which is what I was expecting. And speaking of soup, Bak Kut is my favorite soup ever, especially in Singapore. I discovered it in Singapore and I loved it ever since. It brought me to Marina Bay Sands food court, hawker center, they would call it. It was raining when I visited the Super Tree Grove, so I couldn't go ahead, and that has brought me to the Marina Bay Sands food court / hawker center, where I had some Bak Kut, which is perfect for the rain. I couldn't remember the name of the place, but it's the only stall that sells Bak Kut in there. It's not the best I've had, but it still hit the spot. If you don't know what Bak Kut is, the story of it is that it is just basically boiled pork ribs bone, right? And it's usually, originally a poor man's food because it's very cheap to make. And I know because I have bought a pre-made packet that I brought home to Sydney so I can make it at home. It's just so soothing. If you love soup like I do, it just gives you that homey, it's like a hug. I just love it so much, and I usually eat it with steamed veggies as well, with some soy sauce, diluted soy sauce with broth. And then some garlic. You eat it with white rice. That's it, just broth, pork meat falling off the bones, and some white rice. 8 out of 10. Another place that I went to is a place called Kendall Nut. It is in Dempsey Road, and it is a very beautiful place in Singapore. I really enjoyed just looking around. It's so lush, it's so quiet. It looked quite posh, not gonna lie. And there are different restaurants in that row, but I made a booking at Kendall Nut. I had the massaman curry. So much food I wanted to try, but again, I was by myself. So I went for the massaman curry. The service here is excellent. They're very friendly, and that really means a lot, and it goes a long way for a solo traveler. I don't know if it's just me. I'm pretty sure it's the same for everyone else, because it is one of the few human interactions that you get in a day, and it just makes a difference, especially if you're traveling solo. It is a bit pricey, I'm not gonna lie, but the whole vibe, it's got a very high ceiling. It's good for a special event. An 8.5 out of 10. Nayum. Naeum restaurant, the first fine dining that I had in this trip of mine to Singapore. Korean fine dining, that is. Need I say more? This is my first time to try Korean food outside of Korean fried chicken, japchae, the Korean hot pot, and the Korean barbecue. And it happened to be fine dining. What can I say? The staff were very friendly to me. They sat me in this behind the bar, so it was the perfect spot for a solo diner like myself. Plenty of interaction again with the bar people and the staff. And again, as I said earlier, it does make a difference and you feel more at home and you've actually got company rather than just by yourself. And there's nothing wrong with being by yourself. I love it. I advocate for it. However, those interactions are part of that. It's part of that experience of being by yourself. The food was excellent. I actually had a non-alcoholic pairing as well. Of course, they do the alcoholic pairing as well, but I'm not a heavy drinker, and especially by myself, and to pair, I couldn't handle that. The interior is very minimalist and very clean, very Korean, similar to Japanese. They probably don't like that, but that is the whole vibe of the place. I would definitely go back. Their menu changes. I do receive some emails from them, and I believe the chef/owner has another restaurant as well. A 9 out of 10. Is that the first 9 out of all the ratings? I think it might be. It's really good. Uina, a Spanish restaurant in inner streets of Singapore that you would not expect. Very tiny place. To be fair, tiny down the bottom because that's where I was sat by the bar. Again, excellent spot for a solo diner because you can watch the kitchen staff, you can talk to them, you can interact with them. The chef was also cute. I love a good Spanish food, and they had foie gras. I don't really see that in too much or too often, but they had it and it was so good. You have to look at it right now. It was just the juiciest, yummiest foie gras I've ever had. It may look like it's a small space, but they do have a second floor. I didn't see what that looked like, but I'm guessing it's a good spot. It's more of like a tapas, drinking kind of spot. Now we have to save the best for last. Let's save the best for last. Marguerite in the Flower Dome. I have to tell you that this booking was supposed to be my wedding anniversary date. We divorced, and my ex-husband, who had every right not to want to come to the trip anymore, so he didn't want to come. I went ahead the trip, and I went and dated myself in this fancy ass restaurant, and I had a pretty damn good time. Let me tell you, the whole experience. So when you take a Grab or a taxi to the Super Grove Tree or the Flower Dome, it will take you to this spot. And they would have a buggy that will drive and take you from there to the restaurant. And as you enter the restaurant, it has that very lush, very peaceful, dim light interior, which I know is by design because it just really is very fitting to the garden. The set menu is carefully curated. I had the non-alcoholic pairing yet again because why not? However, I was too full. And I'm sure everyone else was as well because they actually offer midway through before the Flower Dome closes that you can walk around if you want. I've been a few times, so I didn't want to do that, and I was kind of tired. I wanted to get home sooner rather than later. But the service was excellent, like the best service as you would expect from all the places that I've been to in this trip to Singapore. Someone even complimented my watch, which is always nice. And then of course, at the end of it, I didn't take the buggy anymore. I walked back because I had to burn the calories that I ate because look at all this food. A 9.5 out of 10. I think this is the highest rating I've given so far. Well, there are lots to eat in Singapore. There's no doubt. There's a lot of variety from different cuisines, different vibe, different locations, different price points. If you have any questions about any food in Singapore or any of the places that I've talked about, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and happy eating. Bye.